Today the talk is entitled Money, So They Say. And I want to poke some holes in some of our beliefs about money, because I do firmly believe that any limitations on the flow of money into our lives has to do with, at least partially, if not totally, what our consciousness is and what our beliefs are. I talked to you in the very first talk this month, where I talked about standing under a waterfall with a teacup to receive the good that God is giving out, and the Spirit is spreading out and drowning us in, except we're not drowning when we learn to swim and we learn to breathe. We learn to accept more. Well, that's partly what we're talking about today. Or what are some of those things that we may be blocking the flow without even realizing it, that we're in our thinking and in our consciousness. A lot of that is very much culturally defined. And by that I mean for people who've grown up in certain cultures and certain income levels and become so accustomed to that, they have limits in our thinking that would keep us or keep them from stretching into higher and different places. So we're going to talk about all that today, or a little bit of that today. What we're really bringing to focus, and I love that Maya reminded us that our theme for the year is Everyday Wonder, that really what Everyday Wonder is about, it's about a very kind and positive look at our lives, not a critical, judgmental one, but a kind and positive look that is supported with curiosity and interest, so that we get curious. We've been encouraging ourselves all year to get curious about our lives, get curious about our thinking. One of the greatest and most important qualities for longevity and for living vital, full, exciting lives is curiosity. Part of what we call looking old and seeming old is the loss of curiosity, where rather than being curious about all the changes that are going on in the world and all the evolution of human thought and consciousness, people get critical and bored and tired because it's not the way it used to be. Remember before we had cell phones? Some of you do. Well, I'm just very, very, very happy we are using cell phones. And I know I get frustrated with the complexity of some of it now that my grandchildren think nothing of and just go and do, but I get them to teach me. Cahill Gibran said, our generations following us are here to teach us, not for us to teach and control and manage them. We give them what we can, we set them free, and then they teach us, whatever age we are. So the core idea here for everything we do, I think, around here is that what you believe, as you believe, it is done unto you. Jesus said it 2,000 years ago. Other teachers have said it in different ways. And it's so vital. It's not when you believe it or if you believe it. It's as you are believing it is the actual verbiage there, the actual way it's structured. As you believe, it is done unto you. As I believe in prosperity, it is coming, and I am experiencing it and being able to accept and take more of it in. As I believe in health, my health is improving and my health is operating the way it's designed to operate. As I believe, not someday when I believe. So what do we need to do to open that up a little more so we can receive more of the prosperity that we talk about, of the money we talk about? I loved her flashing the money. That was great. So one of the ways we can do that is to pay attention to any kind of negative, or even not negative, but just catches, we call them, where something in you goes, what? And I wonder, and please don't show me your hands, is how many of you had a catch when she starts waving $100 bills around in front of us? I loved it. It was kind of fun. There was a time when I would have gotten very angry and walked out. Spiritual church talking about money. You got to be kidding. They must be want more. That's the only reason to do it, is because they want more. They want more of mine, and they're going to try to manipulate me into giving it to them by making me feel guilty about something. Well, we don't use guilt here. And I'm sad sometimes about that, because, you can get a lot out of people using guilt and shame. We don't do that. Our motivation in talking about money is about helping all of us to create better ideas and greater prosperity and the greater flow of money for us. And we know out of that will come a greater flow to our center. But we don't need to beat you over the head about that. We'll just remind you at the end of the time that, hey, we need money to pay for all this. So it's not about making you guilty or attempting to pull anything from you. It's about new ideas. Louise Hay says, if you want to clean up anything, you got to see the dirt first. So we're going to talk about a little bit of the dirt and a whole lot about the cleaning up. I don't know if you've ever heard the whole phrases, all those phrases about filthy lucre. My dad used to use that, filthy lucre. And he said it in a sort of grunting sort of way that I never understood why he did that. But it was filthy lucre. And then the other one I always heard from my grandparents, often heard, was money is the root of all evil. You know, that one's been floating around out there in the human experience for a very long time. And like money makes the world go around, it ain't exactly true. The original quote is, the love of money is the root of all evil. Well, that ain't much better when you think about it. But when you go back further and look at the original languages where those phrases came from, where that one came from, the real word there is lust, not love, because it's not the same love words. In the biblical material has lots of words for love, but the one that's used here is not one of them. It's the lust for money is the root of all evil. Now let's talk about lust. You didn't know we were going to get into that today, did you? I love it. So let's talk about lust. Here's what the definition of lust is. Lust is desiring and wanting something you do not believe you can ever have. Think about it. If you just don't, you see that person there across the room and you're like, I really want that. And you get all excited about it, but you can't even talk to them. Because deep down in your soul and your heart, you don't believe you're going to ever have any kind of relationship with them. So you watch from afar, and you wish, and you pine, and you hurt, and you go into pain. That's what lust is about. Approaching money that way is the same thing. The lust for money, the idea that money is something that other people have that I never can, is the root of all evil. Because then we end up doing crazy things to try to get from them rather than realizing we can create from within us ways in which money will flow to us easily and freely. So that's the first kind of false idea we need to clean out. The whole thing about money being evil or the lust for money or any of that. You know, the other one that's right along with that is a sort of idea that being really spiritual. I don't know how many of y'all heard that spiritual when you were younger, but I heard spiritual down here in the South. Being really spiritual and being really focused on things of a higher consciousness and a higher idea means you have to be poor. Or if you're going to do that, then you're probably going to be poor. And it comes out of myths and ideas about Jesus that at least in the Western culture, that Jesus was poor, that he had the stories born in a manger. Poor guy, he's born in a barn. And yet a manger in those days was the best place he could have been born, because they're traveling. They stop at an inn, a hotel. What we think of the Holiday Inn, or we think of much nicer ones than that, that ain't what it was. An inn in those days was a big open space that had some sort of fence around it and guards, more like the parking lot at a really nice hotel. And the only buildings usually were where the family that ran the place lived, and where the guards stayed. And the barn was the only sheltered, warm place for the animals. Because, if you don't take care of your car, you can't drive it. If you don't take care of your donkey, it ain't going to take you anywhere. So they took care of their animals in the sheltered place, but the people slept in tents out in the inn. This wasn't poor. It wasn't a sad thing. They let her go into the barn and and where she could be warm and protected, where Mary could be taken care of, and then Jesus was born. The fact that they could afford to go to an inn said they weren't poor, because that was pretty well reserved for people with money. As he grew up with a carpenter's family. That was not a poor family. That was an upper middle class family. That was a working class family and well thought of in the community. So all that's just twisted thinking that perhaps has been impressed upon us for reasons of ulterior motives from the past. And the others were things of, the Buddha was not poor. He came from a very wealthy family and was always supported in that respect. And you can go right on down the line. People said about Mother Teresa, it took millions of dollars to keep her in poverty. Same thing has been true for others. And that's fine. That's good. And that means that you don't need to be poor to be truthful, to be tuned in, to be more spiritual. To be more spiritual means you have greater offerings, greater opportunities to give, and greater things that can move through you into life and into your life and into others. Another area that is often a uncomfortable area has to do with financial status. There was a time in my life where if someone cut me off in traffic and it was a Mercedes or a Rolls Royce, I got really pissed. If it was an old beat up clunker, I didn't think as badly of them. Now, I'm not proud of that. But that's an idea that somehow prosperity should not be allowed to cut in front of me, but someone who's struggling like me should be. That's a kind of an idea we need to turn on its head. Not that anybody should be allowed to cut in front of me, thank you very much, but that whoever is doing what they're doing is doing it because that's who they are and where they are. Get comfortable about those kinds of differences. And if you happen to be in one group or the other, both sides can get really into shame about that, get embarrassed by those things. I have friends and travel with friends and camp with friends who have a great deal of income and money, and we enjoy each other, and sometimes they support a little more to me, sometimes I do for them, but there's no expectation that anyone's going to take care of anyone else just because one group has more money than another group. In fact, we love and respect each other for where we are, and we celebrate each other for where we are. No shame either way. One of the things that I've said before around this, maybe not here. So think a minute. If I were going to ask you to stand up where you are and share with the group what your favorite sexual position is, how does that feel? Yeah. Now here's another one. I'm going to ask you to stand up and tell us your financial worth. Which one's easier? There was a time when people bragged about their income and how much they make and kept their sex lives very private. Since the 60s, the sex lives have been a little more open, but much more likely to be shamed or feel shame or feel protective about what our income is. Now, we're not going to do that. I just wanted you to see how that felt and what the difference is, because that tells you something about what your thinking is. Because that's what we're doing here. We're teasing out some ideas that may be standing in the way that you weren't even aware of. Another one around shame is to rise above the level of your family. And financially, it can be very difficult sometimes, especially when you hit that threshold. When you know this is I'm about to buy the biggest, nicest, most beautiful home anybody in my family has ever had. People bump up against that and they self-sabotage and don't even realize that's what's happening. It's a glass ceiling kind of thing. So just be aware, notice, are any of those things rumbling around in your head that may be blocking what you're doing and how you're moving forward and making it more difficult to do those things? So, a lot of this is about understanding the value and the reality of what money really is. It's not a thing, it's an idea first. And it's an idea, it is a symbolic way in which we exchange value. We used to do it with beads and shells and coconuts and semi-precious stones and all sorts of things. And then we graduated to a much more trusting system of dollars and money. And thus she waved them at us. And it was wonderful. But then we grew beyond that, and now money is about the exchange of electronic blips into one system or another. It's not about how many dollar bills you happen to hold. It's about what the accounting says in the electronics system. It's kind of an interesting thing when you stop and think about it. We don't even use money anymore. We use electronic exchange. But it's all about exchanging value for value. It's about giving and receiving and letting the flow go. Money is simply a symbol for the flow of good in our lives and flow of good out to others. We pay attention. What we pay attention to is what we value. As I've come back to Atlanta, I've been back here now almost 4 years, jeepers. And I've reconnected with friends I left here in 1995 to go around the country doing this teaching. And I've had a wonderful experience. And as I've come back, I've bumped into my friends and gotten connected with some of them who've been here the whole time. And they've created wonderful houses and homes, and they've developed all sorts of kinds of experiences that have made life here really rich and wonderful for them. And I went through a short time shortly after I moved here where I kind of got down on myself because I've spent all my money on running around the country and enjoying it and connecting with different people and living in some really spectacular places up in the mountains and down by the beach and all over, and love it and love that constant newness that has provided for me. And then it dawned on me, it's just about values. What matters? What matters the most to you? And then we build our lives around those values. And money is the symbol of those values. So a lot of this is about not only knowing what our values are, but opening up more fully and freely to those values and seeing them as a potential place of flow. I value this teaching. It has saved my life more than once. It is the very stuff that I'm made of now. It's how I think. It's what I do. Much of it is second nature. I still have a long way to go because I still have a lot of those little hidden things back there that prevent me. But as I've gotten clear about that and figured out where the real values are, there's a much greater sense of freedom and prosperity. We've been talking about prosperity. When we talk about value, do we value prosperity? Prosperity is not about how many dollars you got in your bank account or how much or what the electronics happen to be saying about any of that. It is instead really about the whole idea of how you are living your life and how you are taking it forward. The values are prosperity, is defined as freedom, the freedom to live the way I choose, where I choose, with whom I choose, when I choose. Now, the when may take the time has to be a little flexible there sometimes as to how things develop and when and where. But when I go back through my journals from my early years in this teaching and before, I'm aware that many of the things I wrote down in my visions and dreams have come about, not at that time, but later, because my values, and I stuck to them, and they guided and directed me where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do. So everyone should have the freedom of prosperity and have the opportunity to that freedom. And this teaching is all about freedom. The beginning of the Science of Mind textbook talks about freedom as our birthright. And that is freedom over our lives, our bodies, everything about us and who we are. And when I say us, I mean men, women, children, all in everyone in between. There is freedom in the center. There is freedom all around. So I have a suggested assignment for you this week. And John might have done this last week, but if he did, you're getting it again. And that is, when you next pull out your wallet and take a look at your bills, hopefully you've got some $100 bills in there. I carry a $100 bill all the time because it makes me feel rich to open my wallet and look at $100. It's like, cool. I can't be stuck anywhere with that. I've been stuck without any and had it provided, but that's another story. So it's about the assignment, though, is to, when you take it out, or even when you're in your meditative time, pull out your biggest bill and just sit and look at it a little bit and decide, ask it, bring to your awareness, what does money really mean to you? What does this bill at its current size really mean to you? What are the possibilities of that? Are there old stories you have about money? One pops in my head right now that I am still trying to get rid of. You better use it quick because somebody's going to take it away from you. You may have those, you may have many others. Whatever it is, bring them to the front, recognize the craziness of them, the untruth in them, and declare the opposite truth. Money is my friend. I have a great loving relationships with money. Money flows to me. I'm a money magnet. I like that one. Some affirmation that allows that. And money is God in action. That's Raymond Charles Barker talking. Those kinds of affirmations begin to shift and change whatever those old messages are by changing them into new messages. You deserve that. You deserve more money. You deserve all the money you want. And so do I, and so does everyone else. And so it is. Thank you.